I ended up buying the Kimmy Gym, and I ended up buying the Terrier for $3,000, and the Princess Eva, and one other boat. So the harbor master and all of them, they didn't know what to think, you know, because I think I told them I was going to bring the boats to San Diego, but I never did. So what happened was I started fishing there for albacore, and they didn't believe me. They thought I was a drug smuggler, or they didn't know what to think of me. Here's some antique dealer comes into this harbor, you know, with all these John Wayne speaking kind of guys, and you know, they called my Gucci shoes pilgrim shoes. You know how they have the little thing here? They said, "Oh, pilgrim shoes." You know, this was funny. This was really funny. Anyway, I had a fondness for albacore. It's just an adventure fishing for tuna. You're fishing 100 miles out. It's just unlike any other sport you could ever imagine. Going out there is just brilliant. You know, 60 miles out, fishing on these underwater seamounts. But you know, San Francisco is a very dangerous place. And a lot of people have died there, and a lot of things have happened over there. The wind is very windy. The tides are very high. And there's things like that, the currents that will just spin your boat around. And then the fog. The fog is very treacherous. So we have a lot of things that could have happened. So we really didn't do too well there. And after about 2 or 3 or 4 years, I kind of was on the tail end and kind of almost wanted to quit. So what I did was I kind of started, you know, getting back into the antiques a little bit. And the only reason why I got into the commercial fishing full time was because I didn't have enough money for the antiques to fund the business properly. Because every time I bought something, it was 1, 3, 5, 8, 15,000 an item, speculating you're going to sell it. Well, if you sell it right away, fine. But if you don't sell it right away, you know, you're tied up a lot of money. So I figured there's 3 ways to make money. You could, you know, be in the food business, you could be in the sex business, or you could have like a nightclub or a liquor business. Well, I didn't have the money for the liquor. I didn't know about the other businesses. Well, I said food. People have to eat every day, right? Yeah, so let's do the tuna. We'll take the money and we'll buy the antiques. Well, it looks good on paper, but Mother Nature's a different deal out there. So I ended up buying this boat called the Top Cat, and I wanted it. What happened was when the doctor, the Oakland A's, an orthopedic surgeon, owned it, and I told him I wanted to buy it on finance, and he didn't want to sell it right away. So about 2 years later, I'm down in Miami, and I just sold this fantastic painting to these Cuban decorators of this like jungle and African scene, guys with, you know, like just semi-nude girls, beautiful jungle, really a rare 19th century European painting. And I get this call from the doctor in San Francisco, and he says, "You still want the boat?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know if I want to fish anymore." Well, sure enough, he goes, "Well, what can you do?" I said, "Well, I just sold a painting. How about, you know, $3,000 down and $1,500 a month?" So he said, "Well, okay." So anyway, that got me back into the commercial fishing as I was just trying to get out of it. Well, the best fishing in the world for tuna is up in Oregon and Washington. Everybody goes up there from Honolulu, San Diego, San Francisco, Oregon. They all fish for albacore up there. It's very, very good. In fact, they all sell to Starkist, and these are all the big boats that hold 20, 30, 40 tons. My boat was a passenger carrying vessel, a party boat, and it only could hold about 5,000 to 6,000 pounds. So we started selling fresh fish, sashimi quality albacore. And the buyers up there, they don't want to pay anything, 80 cents a pound and all that stuff. So we kind of call it cat food price. So I had some very big contacts in Los Angeles, Japanese guys and Koreans, huge place in downtown LA, you know, Skid Row LA, the guy, a Japanese guy with a 45 guarding the gate. He opens the door, you go in there, there's 10 people in jumpsuits, you know, picking up the fish. 4 Japanese guys speaking French on the phone, booking fish, and we ended up supplying the fish to them. They loved our fish because we would cool it off right away within 5 minutes and kill all the histamines and put it on in slush ice and then pack it on ice. And they actually preferred ours over most other boats. So we had a very good in. But we never really made that much. So then what I did was I started trucking the fish from Oregon all the way down to Los Angeles. But what happened was when I first got up there, it was in Coos Bay, which is the farthest sticking point off of California. It's, if you take your arm and put it like an elbow, this is the farthest point off California, and it's by Point Blanco, 30 miles from Point Blanco. And Point Blanco is actually the farthest western point in the Western Hemisphere. it sticks out so far that you're almost in line with Alaska, so all the swells come up, and you have swells from 2 or 3 different directions coming each way, and it literally does this washing machine. In fact, there were stories during World War II that this guy, one of the admirals, had to bring one of the boats around there after the war, and he said, "I'm not going to do it." And they said, "If you don't do it, you're going to lose your job." That's how dangerous this place was. Well, Coos Bay is on fire. The albacore you'd be trolling. There's like 2 or 3 fish jumping, chasing your jig, just jumping out of the water, crashing, spray, 25-knot winds, albacore jumping, hitting your jigs, and just fantastic energy and just world-class tuna fishing, the best in the world. But the problem with down there was there's no live bait, and we love to use live bait. And with jack poles, the old way, where they, the lift poles, that's what we really love to do. All the bait's up north by the Columbia River, and that's where all the San Diego, all the big bait boats, they go up there and they make their bait and they catch it. There was no anchovies down by Coos Bay. So you're talking about another 300 miles up. Well, this place we're talking the Columbia River. Now, the Columbia River is the most dangerous port in all of the United States. It's where the Coast Guard trains their boats that flip over to save things. The reason why is you have all these mountains and these great lakes from like Lewis and Clark and all those, the great expeditions of the Pacific Northwest. And they come from Idaho and they all converge into this one little outlet. And it meets the Pacific Ocean. Well, when it meets the Pacific Ocean, the ocean's going this way and the river's going this way. So it just creates this upwelling. And literally does these spins like this, where you could be in a boat and also your boat will just start twisting and stuff. Well, there's been over 2,200 deaths there. The Coast Guard has a monument there, and they have the museum, basically, of accidents up there. And my friends and everybody and the locals down in Coos Bay, down there in Charleston, they said, "Do not go up there. Do not go up there. Whatever you do, do not go up to the Columbia River, the great almighty Columbia River." Well, I didn't listen to them, and I went up there. So I went up there, and as soon as I got up there that year, I had to go to California, and then I had to come back and forth to watch my boat because it was the end of the season. I didn't get a chance to fish. So I ended up meeting this guy who was a very nice guy, real young and kind of like, Thomas Huckleberry Finn, very, he'd make anything out of anything. He would make things for me that were like, floppers. He'd work all night on them. He'd fix my boat. He would do anything he can. His boat, his engine was out, and he ended up getting a bad engine from a friend of his uncle's, which was a bad engine, had been sunken underwater. So he did not get out that season, and he worked all summer long and pulled the bulkheads out and tried to slide his engine alone, the new one, the tractor, the Ford Lehman engine. It never really worked out. So the second year he never, and we would hang out every single day and drink and smoke and just have a great time in life. It was fantastic. He was my best friend I had. He lived at his grandma's house right there on the corner, and I'd go over there and have coffee. And I mean, it was as close to, Ropeback Mountain as you could ever imagine. I mean, this guy was my buddy. He was my buddy. Well, he wanted to, let's see, we were going to fish together on my boat, and it never happened because we were trying to get his boat together. So, one season in 2007,